Well, welcome everybody. We are talking about sex after menopause.
Which is
Are
a very
you
important
ready?
topic because so many of us are going to go through it and so many of us already have. And your body's different and sex is different and life is different. And so there's a lot of
Mhm.
factors. We highlight some very important ones in this
Yeah,
podcast around hormone levels and what they all mean, these different stages of
mhm.
life that we go through.
Yeah, including things that you may want to try. As you see your body shift and change, your intimacy with your partner, with yourself may shift and change. And we've got a lot of great ideas for you to embrace the change and notice that life could be even better even after menopause.
Oh,
Are you
yeah,
ready?
it can be very full. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
So, sex after menopause, what does it look like? And more importantly, what does it feel like? Because this is something that I help lots of ladies with. And, sex changes after you go through the big change. For a lot of women, there is a lot more discomfort, there's a lot more pain. If there was any of that to begin with, then that's going to be even more heightened after menopause. And, when a woman goes through menopause, her hormone levels go way down, especially estrogen, which is that hormone that keeps your vaginal walls thick and supple and full of viscous fluids. So that does diminish. And so, it's really important to kind of look at your estrogen levels as you are going through perimenopause and into menopause. But I think the most important thing, and I know you would agree with me, Leah, on this is really just staying present and tuned in to what feels good to you in that moment.
Yeah, so this is definitely Willow's realm of genius as opposed to mine. I've had the privilege of sitting in circle with women over these last years and being a part of the conversation and noticing what works in terms of sexual connection and what doesn't work in terms of sexual connection, and seeing how some women, it's sort of this whole idea of if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And what does that mean? And how do you strike a certain kind of comfort in what your body is changing and going through? So a lot of the conversations I've had have been along the lines of thinning tissue and natural treatments and how to communicate with your partner as you start to enliven and bring more elasticity back to the tissue. But one of the things you just said, Willow, that kind of caught my attention is you want to test your estrogen levels. So I have not gone through menopause yet. And I started to talk to my doctor about wanting to get my levels tested so that I could see what like my base point is. So if I were to do treatments in menopause, where do I want my levels to be? And she really discouraged that. She goes, your hormone levels are changing minute by minute. There's no real way to test it. So what do you mean when you say test your estrogen levels?
Yeah. So, I mean, as a woman's starting to go through perimenopause and she's starting to notice a decline in her sex drive or less comfort with penetrative sex, then it is interesting to have a look at where your hormone levels are at. This is what a lot of naturopathic doctors will do. They'll test your estrogen and progesterone, testosterone levels, and then based on where you're at going through perimenopause, they might give bioidentical hormones. Now, on the spectrum of holistic doctors, there are, a medical doctor would be considered more of like a reductionistic style practitioner. And then there's the holistic style practitioner. And a lot of naturopaths are somewhere right here in the middle, a lot of functional medicine somewhere in the middle, because they're still wanting to give bioidentical hormones. And I tend to be on this side, like the most holistic that I possibly can. So I'll always look to diet, lifestyle, and herbs before even going to bioidentical hormones. And sometimes bioidentical hormones are really necessary. So, let's just back up a little bit and talk about estrogen for a second. So, there's three kinds of estrogen and respectively called E1, E2, and E3. And so E1 is esterone. So esterone is what we produce when we're in menopause. So one of the things that your body does as a woman is it produces estrogen through primarily your ovaries, all of your fertility years. And then once you go through menopause, your ovaries are no longer producing that, and your adrenals are going to take over for the ovaries. So if you're heading into peri and post-menopause with depleted adrenal glands, you're heading into a disaster, right? So that's why it's so important. And I love to work with women in their 40s, early 50s to really, really juice up their adrenal glands. And there's so much you can do. There's herbs, there's diet, there's sexual practices, breath work. I mean, there's a myriad of things you can do to plump up those adrenals so that when the ovaries take their final bow and exit stage left, the adrenals are like ripe and ready to jump on board and to produce this estrone. When there is a good amount of estrone during that peri and postmenopausal period, there's going to be a lot less symptoms, a lot less hot flashes, night sweats, dry vaginal tissues, vaginal atrophy, thinning vaginal walls. So that's why keeping your adrenals healthy, happy, and strong is like my number one tout in life. It's what I'm always screaming from the mountaintops for people to do. Like, pay attention to your adrenals. So that's estrone. And I always think of estrone. I remember it because it's the crone. You're stepping into your crone years, and that's estrone. And, the maiden, the mother, and the crone are sort of these three stages in life that we go through. And, the crone is like, it's really the wise woman. It's like you're stepping into your power years is something that I like to call it, because you actually no longer are on that crazy emotional roller coaster ride that those high levels of estrogen and progesterone produce in your being, but you have this more even keeled. So you still have all the same hormones. They're just not on a roller coaster ride. So you have more power because you've got more equanimity. You're at a more balanced state in your life. So that's estrone.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. So for those that don't know, like, what's the difference between perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and at what stage and how long are those stages?
Good question. Menopause is considered you're in full post-menopause after you haven't had a period for 12 months. So a lot of times people will go through perimenopause and they're like, oh my God, I haven't had a period in 11 months. I'm almost full-blown menopause. One more month, and then they'll have a period in that last 12 months. So then it restarts. So that's why some people can be like, oh, my perimenopause lasted for 10 years, Nowadays, and nowadays what we're seeing is perimenopause is lasting a hell of a lot longer than it used to or than it should because of our environment, because of what we're eating, because of what we're drinking. Drinking out of these thin plastic water bottles is a big no-no, and normally I don't do it, but I'm traveling. And so and also stress levels. All of this affects our hormones. So if we were living on the farm in ancient China and eating, liver for breakfast and like vegetables for dinner every single day, and we weren't eating sugar and we weren't eating bread and we weren't drinking alcohol and we weren't stressing, we'd probably go through perimenopause in a year or two. So a really, really healthy, robust woman will go through it much, much quicker.
So perimenopause is basically when you start to, at a certain age in middling years, your periods are coming less frequently. And you're not really in menopause until you have gone without a period for 12 months or over.
Exactly.
I was just going to ask, like, why should we be alarmed or worried if our perimenopause lasts so long? Like if I were at 11 months, that were to happen twice, right? Or 3 times in 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a big deal unless you're suffering from a lot of symptoms. If you're just suffering because of this perimenopause, if you're having hot flashes, can't sleep at night, always waking up at 3 a.m. I just met a woman the other day. She's like, I've been waking up every night in the middle of the night. I'm like, do you wake up around 2 or 3 a.m.? And she's like, yes. How did you know that?
Right.
And it's because of the liver. The liver stores excess hormones and exogenous hormones that come from thin plastic water bottles and other sources. So we've got all these different things that the liver's holding on to. So I was just saying to her, do a liver cleanse. Like, you'll feel so much better. And that might be all you need to sleep through the night. That's why I'm always telling my peeps, you got to do at least one a year, one liver cleanse a year, if not two. So, but that's exactly right what you said. It's like when your period kind of starts to shift, and like I'm 42 and I'm starting to notice there are less days and they're much, much easier than they ever were before. So I'm starting to see something, but probably in another 10 years, around 52, I'll start skipping months and skipping periods and, having that kind of symptoms. And so most people will begin perimenopause like around 50, for anywhere between 48 to 55, really, depending on genetics and environment and stress levels and what you eat.
So for some reason, I thought like you really want your body to keep producing estrogen as long as possible. So if perimenopause was lasting longer, then those would be signs that your body's still producing estrogen, which sounded like a good thing. But what I'm hearing you say is that... Okay. All right. So the world of female hormones is so like complex. There's so many mixed messages out there, right?
Yes. And I've been studying the endocrine system for 2 decades, and I still have to double check and triple check myself and make sure that I'm dosing people right with the right herbs and the right bioidenticals and all of that, because it's super important. You want your body to continue to produce estrogen as long as possible because of bone density. So getting back to the E1, E2, and E3, estradiol is E2, and estradiol is the one that's going to keep you from getting osteoporosis early in life if it maintains longer into your 55. If you're starting at 55, you're doing great. So estradiol is the hormone, the estrogen, that really, it's the strongest of all the estrogens, and it's the one that dials up. I like to think of ways to remember these things as I've studied over the years. And it dials the energy up and it dials the energy down. So that's how I think of estradiol, because it's the one that drives your cycle. So it makes you ovulate. It causes the LH to surge so that there's an ovulation, and then it causes the endometrial lining to thicken so that implantation can take form. It even causes the cervical fluid to thin so that the sperm can swim through it up to the egg. So it's really miraculous how our bodies work. And estradiol so that's E2. So I like to think of this as like the maiden, right? The maiden is the one who's like living in the estradiol years. We call it the cycling years, the fertility years. It's basically when you're still having a period.
Okay, and estradiol is the main player with that.
Yeah, exactly. And estradiol is the one that's going to diminish and pop off the stage when you go through menopause. And then E3, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to write down the first one was, it reminded estradiol for Crone, right?
Esterone, yeah.
Esterone, okay, great.
Esterone, estradiol. And then we get into the third one, which is estriol. So estriol is E2 and estradiol is E3. Not that important, but just so I got my facts right. Estriol is the hormone that is produced by the placenta during pregnancy. And there's actually something that I forget what it is exactly, but something that comes from the baby, that comes from the fetus, that causes the placenta to make that estrogen. And so you get really full and really plump and really juicy with estriol during your pregnancy. So estriol is like, there's all of you is blooming forward
Okay.
in life, and that's how I remember that one.
And
I
so
just think
that's
of these
considered
little
E2, right?
yes, estriol
Okay.
is E2.
I love that.
And that's the mother years, right? So obviously, it's the mother years. And, you know, during the mothering years, that's the time that it's like fertility, fecundity. It's all about growth and expansion, abundance, holding energy, and also gaining of knowledge. So moving as you're in that mothering time of your cycling life, then you're gaining knowledge, so that when you move into the crone, the estrone, you're really in that wisdom again. So there's a lot of like fullness and fulfillment, and like, you know, really checking in with yourself during pregnancy, like, where am I full in my life and where am I over full in my life? Like, where am I overwhelmed and where am I just fulfilled? So I think that's something to really tune in with yourself, especially as you are stepping into motherhood, because it just gets busier and busier from there. And you want to make sure that you've got that sense of discernment really well dialed in. So fulfillment, how's your fulfillment in your sexual life? How's your fulfillment in your social and your community life? How's your fulfillment in your emotional life? How's your fulfillment in your financial, in your home, all these different sectors of your life? So that mother time of our lives is represented by the full moon, of course, and spring energy and summertime as well.
And so it sounded like, you know, when you're taking a look at your life in general during these mothering years, you're looking at different areas of your life, not just from a literal mothering standpoint, but from, because there's lots of us who chose not to have kids, including you and me. And so I'm wondering,
That's right.
how do we connect more deeply to this mothering cycle, having chosen not to have kids? How can we apply that in our life, regardless of whether or not we chose to bear children?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Because for those of us who are still in that sort of mothering years time, but have not given birth to a baby, we're often giving birth to other things, like you and I giving birth to this podcast, and giving birth to, families, giving birth to lifestyles, giving birth to businesses and work in the world. And it's interesting, you know, this maiden mother crone is sort of comes from this Celtic or pagan, this earth-based tradition, and a lot of them will add in a fourth one, which I really like, because I like to look at the 4 phases of the moon cycle, so it kind of makes sense to slip a fourth one in there. So then you would have the maiden, the mother, and the enchantress. And the enchantress would be you and I, Leah. We would be the enchantress. So we're playing with that fullness. We're playing with that fecundity and that abundance and that expansion and that gaining of knowledge in a different way, in a more I don't know, I want to say sovereign way. Not that motherhood isn't sovereign as well, but there's I think there's more attention to the way that you're weaving your essence into the world, hopefully. I mean, that's what I'm doing anyway. So,
yeah, I heard of, I was speaking to a client the other day, and she had mentioned this name of a doctor. I think she's pretty famous. I believe she's English, and she's dead now, but she was very popular and talked about menopause and how for many women there is and she looked at the maiden, the mother, and the crone cycle as well, and she kind of called this enchantress your second round of the maiden, where even from like a sexual standpoint, there are some women who gather the energy and go through another maiden period with their, especially with their sexuality and their essence in the world and how they kind of show up in their body. And it's from a different place. Like there's more maturity connected because there's more having lived more life. And so you kind of have options regarding where your sexual expression ends up unfolding as you go through menopause and you become, then you're post-menopausal. Whether you retain your sexual aliveness or whether you just allow it to go to sleep. And so I'm wondering, now that you're bringing this up, like what's the parallel between this other fourth energy, whether that is the mature maiden or whether that is the enchantress, and how is it? I mean, I think it's a really confusing time for women regarding their sexuality. It feels like their body's shutting down, their libido goes down, their tissues thin, it hurts. And there's a feeling of just like disinterest. I mean, I see that repeatedly come through my classes. And then there are women who seem to have, that's just not their reality. In fact, they start having the best sex of their life. They may go through a pause, menopause, where they take the literal pause and reflect on their life and go, wow, I've lived a lot of life. This is what I've learned. I'm gathering my wisdom. And I am going to take a pause to deeply feel everything my body's going through. But it doesn't mean it's the end of something. It actually turns into the beginning of something. So, it seems like there's these two choices. And what can you say about that?
Yeah, it does kind of seem like that. And I mean, I think you and I are on the cusp of this next phase. I mean, we've still got some time before we get there, but I wonder, how it will be for us because of the work that we do and how we've been following this tantric and Taoist track for many, many years, and how we really believe the importance of intimacy and sexuality, like really makes a huge difference in your life. And I think it seems like if a woman already has, this is not true across the board, as I'm saying, and I'm realizing, like, I've talked to a lot of women who had great, amazing rockin' sex lives, and then they hit menopause and they were just like, meh, not that interested, don't really care about it. And then there are those who are like, meh, not that interested, but I know how important it is. So I'm going to practice sounding and practice breathing and practice all these tantric practices in order to keep myself in the game. That adage, use it or lose it, kind of does hold some clout here, because the less you do have sexual intercourse and even just like play on the vulva, on the outer part of the vagina, the more the tissues will atrophy. They like attention, even if it's just like playing with the clitoris and the vulva. They just like attention. The vagina likes attention, is what I know.
Yes, this is true. Regardless of whether you actually like attention, your pussy definitely likes attention. It is just the way. That's right. Yeah, it's the way of the universe. That has been proven to me time and time again.
Exactly. And so really just like paying attention to your pussy and your yoni as if it's a whole nother part of you, as if it's this other part of you to take care of. And there are actually a lot of really amazing suppositories that can be really helpful for getting the vaginal tissue back into lubricated and thickened the walls. And those suppositories, I like to use a company called Bezwecken, and they've got different ovules and pearls that you you put inside, and you don't need to be on them long term. That's what I like about them, is you do them for 6 to 8 months to a year, and you're good to go. And you do a little round of them, and then you do another little round of them. And it's pretty minimal as far as like pumping a bunch of hormones into your bloodstream. It's very minimal. So that's kind of one of my first lines of defense when I start getting into like adding hormones into the body exogenously. And
so you have the women who feel connected, like they don't want their sex lives to end. But what about the women who like don't care if it ends? Do you run into that very often in your practice?
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the time. And it's on the one hand, they don't care because they don't have the drive and the desire that they used to have. I think that's what the biggest thing is. It's like, I don't feel the way I used to feel. And you know what? None of us feel the way we used to feel. It doesn't matter where we're at in our journey. We felt one way one day and we feel this way the other day. You know?
That is so true.
And
you're not unusual if you feel like you feel different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, and what are the pillars to intimacy? They're presence, vulnerability, and trust. And so you got to be present with your body and trust that whatever you're feeling in that moment is valid for you in that moment. And you and I both know, like, we could get into a sexual situation where we're like, like, this is kind of boring and not that exciting. But we know that in order to draw and start to cultivate Shakti and bring Jing Qi energy and sexuality into our experience, it's our responsibility. And so we've got to sound and we've got to breathe and we've got to, you know, pull up imagery or whatever works for you to really dirty talk, you know, whatever's going to work for you. And these are some of the things that can be really helpful that I give to women. And I know you do too, Leah, is like, when they're not interested, but they're coming to us, then there must be some part of them that's interested. And sometimes it's their partner who's like, you better figure this out because I can't go another, 20 years without sex here. And so, we'll give them things to do, like, teaching the men how to do longer, like a vulva massage, teaching the men about how to elongate and pleasure the pussy for just to get more charge built up. So already the pot of boiling water for women and getting their self up to orgasmic levels takes longer in general anyway than men's. And it's going to take even longer during these times of our lives. And so, if soft porn is going to work for you, if dirty talk is going to work for you, if role playing, like if you've never role played before, this might be the time in your life to start picking that up and playing with it. I mean, there's just a myriad of things you can do.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you take a look at the sexual stages, there's going to go through a process of a healing stage as you adjust to your body feeling different and your tissues needing something different, which tends to mean the quality of touch you need changes. And there's a refinement, and there should be a refinement because you are becoming a more refined woman. And so we want to make sure that our partners are also malleable enough that they can go on the adventure with us. We may have a healing stage of like allowing ourselves to experience new levels, new interests of refinement of the quality of touch, which may lead to an adventure stage, which it's like finding things that you haven't tapped into before, trying things you never thought you would, having some kind of adventure that you can look forward to and to embrace that fully. I think sometimes this is where we might confront our fears or our shame or unresolved issues from our past. This is an opportunity to get right with that and to find actually more freedom, not feel like freedom's being taken away from you, but freedom's actually being added because it gives us an opportunity to actually move towards something we haven't tried before, which may then become a learning stage where you're really discovering for the first time something new. I know one of the things that keeps appearing in my classes are, you mentioned those suppositories. A lot of women talk about wild yam cream, Damascus rose. What's the other one? Papaya. I think it's papaya. And those creams that you can find in a local health food store by massaging the opening of the introitus, which is the vaginal opening, and making a ritual out of that, taking some of those lovely creams that have been known since ancient times to be really good for women's feminine reproductive organs and tissues, to be able to massage that, and to make a ritual out of that. Like I can imagine doing it as I'm falling asleep, just massaging that cream into the introitus and imagining that the cells and the tissue is just absorbing it and that it's creating elasticity and suppleness. Do you have opinions around any of those three things I've mentioned?
Wild yam is going to kind of promote more hormone production endogenously in your body. I always recommend any woman over 40 be on ashwagandha and chaste tree like as a daily supplement, because ashwagandha is the king herb for your adrenal glands, and then chaste tree is the queen herb for your ovaries. So think about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone production. Those two herbs are gonna work so well. And then there's some other supplements that I like to add in as well on top of those, but that's case dependent. So but I love what you're saying, like make a ritual out of it. And if you want to include your partner, why don't you do the rubbing of the vulva, the wild yam on the vulva, while he gives you tantric kisses and you breathe deeply and look into each other's eyes? I mean, that's intimacy right there. And intimacy can look like so much more than just penetrative sex. And so I think that's the choice that we get to make when we get to that stage where it's like, okay, are we just going to let this go and just who cares, whatever, it's not that big of a deal, I don't really need it? Or are we going to stay committed to connection and love and intimacy and really feeling that closeness with our partners?
Yeah, and I just want to share with the women who are listening, I can't tell you how many women I know who come back after a year, like they've gone through sort of the cycle of the whole perimenopause thing, feeling all the feels, having gotten to the other side where they literally are having the best sex of their lives. Their orgasms are better than they were in their 20s, and they're actually experiencing a richer orgasmic life than ever before. And I'm always like, I'm in such celebration of that, because I feel like I've got something to look forward to. I mean, if it's good now, I'll take even better.
I love it. And you know why I think that is because they've gotten to know themselves on such a more authentic level. Because when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're all worried about your performance and how do I sound and how do I look? Am I sexy enough? It's like we're just all in our heads. We're not actually in our bodies. So when we learn to like, okay, this is what's feeling good right now, and to trust that if you're really feeling good, then whoever you're with is feeling good. That's the ticket.
And, I think also I've got a number of friends who are single during this time in their life, and there is a discouragement often feeling like there's not enough men, and the men that are their age are looking for younger women, and the men that are looking for them seem too old. And so it's like there's this really a feeling of feeling left behind. And there's a scarcity mentality. And it's so how do we overcome that? And it is to realize is the more you connect to your essence, the more that you're present with yourself, the more that you claim your sexual sovereignty, the more that you explore who you are as a sexual being, regardless of age, but especially at this age, the more magnetism you have. Because I have another group of friends who seem to have no problems finding men at this age, and they're not the most beautiful out of this group. They're not the women that are like drop dead gorgeous who have always had an easy time. That's actually counterintuitive, but they're the ones who are the most connected to their essence, who have the most discipline in the way that they find their spiritual fulfillment. And it seems just like this natural thing that just falls into their lap. They're not having to grasp or chase. They're not filled with disappointment. Not to say that they don't have some heartache time and time again. But I'm really I'm looking at this phenomenon going, isn't this interesting that so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, but yet so-and-so who seems so alive and gorgeous and is really struggling and can't seem to find anything anywhere. Like there's this really interesting thing about that. Yes. Have you run into that too?
Oh my God. Same exact thing. I see it all the time, constantly. You see these women or these girlfriends of yours or clients or whomever, and you're like, oh my God, you're gorgeous. You're amazing. Like what is the block? What is holding you back? And it does come down to every time not being connected to your own inner beloved, AKA essence, And so, I mean, that's really, to me, that's the solution to everything. Like if you're feeling jealous inside of a relationship, then have a date with your inner beloved. If you're not catching the guy you want, then have a date with your inner beloved. Like if you're not getting the sexual attention or connection that you want with the partner you're with, then have a date with your inner beloved. And what does that mean to like really make love to your own essence and to bring that forward? It's a absolute shift. Like it's an absolute 180 from being worried about what the world out there is thinking about you and looking at you and comparing yourself to others. And it's absolutely going in and finding what feels good to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also like honoring all these precious stages that make up this novel called our life. You know, like we have these pivotal chapters that have, you know, that are like a profound inflection point where our path has an opportunity to go straight, turn left, turn around, or go right. And it's what you have a choice. And you can change the story, and you can change your mindset about how you feel about something. You may not be able to change your reality, but you can change the way you feel about your reality. And so really claiming that and taking ownership of it and doing your piece of work so that you can find peace no matter the stage that you're in. And so those stages have meaning for you. They become meaningful because you layer on top of it what you wish to experience.
And you're talking about the sexual stages right now, Leah, right?
Well, I'm talking about any stage in life. Yeah, it's not so much the sexual stages. It's just taking a look at your life as a whole. You know, like when I think about, you know, you've got your childhood, and then you have that thing that happened to you at 16, and then at 22 this thing happened, and then this person walked into your life, and they changed everything in the way that you saw life. And now, and then we have these things that are like menopause and being perimenopausal, and we have a way of taking a look at these external things that happen to us and creating a lot of story with them. And they can be stories of great, profound insight, or they could be stories of great hardship, and there can be stories of great love and peace and renewal, right? So if we're going through something difficult, we can take a look at the difficulty and create meaning out of it. What's the meaning you're going to place on it? Is it one of depression and heartache and losing yourself and life now sucks? Or is it going to be, here was a challenge and I met the obstacle and I'm now on the other side, and this is where I live now, and this is how I hold it. I suppose that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I like to call it taking a grain of sand and turning it into a pearl.
Oh, very nice.
Because there's a lesson, there's medicine in all of it. And we had a great interview with one of our speakers, and she was saying, you know, appreciate all of it. Appreciate those challenging moments, appreciate those good moments, appreciate all of it, because you created it. So look how powerful you are that you could create that. And when you are looking at those challenging moments from that perspective, especially the deep heartbreak, especially the loss of a loved one or a lover, or just someone that you thought was going to go one direction and it just did a 180 and it went another direction, that can be so, so painful. And if you can pause long enough to go into the pain instead of just trying to get away from it real quick, but actually go into it and feel it and examine it, and what was your role in it, and why did it happen, and why did it happen for you? Whatever it was didn't happen to you, it happened for you. So where's the lesson? Where's the medicine? Where's that grain with that pearl for you?
Yeah, and the same thing goes for our body. You know, if your body was one way before menopause, and, you know, you never had to deal with a weight issue before, and now suddenly your body is changed and you're holding weight in a different way. It's okay to go through a period of like grieving what was before you can embrace what is. And so like just doing the work necessary to move through the changes and taking time, taking the pause to really be with all the feelings and emotions and the stories you've created around it. And then after you've had a feeling to feel that deeply, then surrendering to it and going, okay, so how do I want to feel about it now? Change has happened. Things are different. How do I want to hold this lightly so that I don't create more suffering for myself? I think that's the key. And, you know, just to throw in a little positive psychology spin on this, when you take a look at life satisfaction studies, People who haven't met or dealt with adversarial experiences, their life satisfaction scores are actually lower than people who've dealt with a lot of adversarial experiences in life. They've had to overcome more obstacles. And the reason why their scores are higher is because when you get to the other side of dealing with something that's been painful or has been a hardship, you have conquered that. You are now on the other side. You get to feel the reward of having faced something hard. And now, having experienced the relief, your experience of gratitude has increased. Your experience of just being able to hold life as precious. All of that stuff increases, which means you're actually happier overall than people who don't have hardship. So you have to remember that when you wish you had more money, or when you wish you have the perfect body, or you wish you have the perfect mate, or you wish your kids were better, like all these things that may create anxiety time and again, come back to like what you've overcome and feel the strength of those accomplishments. And so if perimenopausal has been difficult and you find that your mood swings are off the chart and you're not able to sleep well and the hot flashes are driving you bananas and you're pissed off at your other friends who don't seem to have the same symptoms as you, it's like, okay, how can I breathe? My friend Pamela would say, like, it's the dragon. Let the heat of the dragon burn itself out. This is good. It's burning away the toxins of the past. Let that, like, embrace the hot flashes, the dragon burning away the shit you are no longer going to carry. And I just think, like, what a lovely outlook, to embrace that hot flash that makes you want to strip off all your clothes. And look at you wild woman wanting to strip off your clothes. Feel the heat. Get into the burn,
Get into the burn.
Yeah, you've earned it.
It's coming through for a reason.
That's right. Let everyone if someone is embarrassed about it, that's theirs, honey. Shoot, you've earned stripping off some of them clothes.
That's right. God bless Pamela.
I know.
The dragon, let the dragon come through. And in my medical brain, now correct me if I'm wrong out there, my medical doctor-y type friends, there is something to those hot flashes. They actually, I believe, are cancer preventative, I want to say.
I love that.
That's coming in from somewhere. It may not be exactly cancer preventative. I can't remember, but something about the hot flashes really is good for your health. And so that's why they're happening. And so and also they're an opportunity to like go through this tiny little metamorphosis. You go through this little portal. I mean, some women are having them all day long, so it's an all day long portal, but but each time it's like, here we go. We're going into the discomfort tunnel. We're going to stay present. We're going to stay with it. We're going to breathe. We're going to be with the dragon, and we're going to release the heat. I love that analogy of like releasing all the toxins of the past, emotional toxins,
right?
Food, diet, all the toxins. There's just so many. So let's burn them out.
And, I'll probably be the one who's like really pissed off and angry through this stage in life. I just kind of, it's sort of my disposition.
We're going to still love you.
Oh, I'm going to be like the intense dragon, that's like breathing down everyone's neck, complaining and bitching and moaning, and you don't understand. And I will probably live it fully. And so there is that like, that frustration of change, that frustration of no one really understands, and they even may be listening to you and I going, what are those girls fucking now? It's like they haven't even been through it yet. They have no authority on this matter. And you are right. If you're listening, you're having those thoughts. We haven't gone through it yet. But it matters to us because we are going to go through it. And how you feel about it.
We've helped a lot of women go through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also connect women who've gone through it with each other, because there is a great like value and a feeling of we can get through this together. And everyone's experiences can be a little different.
A sisterhood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
having a sisterhood of women who are going through it, because we all go through all different stages of life differently. But if we're going through it as a tribe, and in tribal culture, like the women were always hanging out together. They would have their periods together, and they would have their babies together, and they would go through menopause together, and they would support each other through it and feed each other wild yam.
Right.
So
Right. So remember to have your tribe
close.
close. Yeah, like if you don't have a tribe now, look for one. We're not meant to do this stuff alone. We're meant to do it together. No. And I think that that's like a really big message, that we can do this in community, that you're not alone. Even if you're the one who's going through it and some of your friends are not, you are paving the way. And so that what you experience can make it easier for the next woman in your life to experience it. And it's why it's so important that we have these conversations.
Yeah. And, I always like to set people up for success through menopause, not only with diet and herbs and getting their, hormones as balanced as possible before they start going through it, but also in their life. Like if they're in a relationship that they've been like, I don't know if I really want to be in this relationship, and they've been doing that for 10 years, just, exit that relationship before you go through perimenopause, because once you start going through it, your capacity is much, much less. You're not going to be able to endure the things that you once endured, because you don't have those hormones that help you endure anymore.
Oh, interesting.
So, really take a good look at your life, and especially around sexuality. Like if you've just been enduring a certain style of sex or a certain way with sexuality with your husband for the last 15, 20 years, and then, menopause comes along, you're just going to have no capacity for that kind of sex anymore. So start to open up your sexual repertoire before you get to that stage, so that you guys have a lot more to play with. And it's not like this sudden, like you have no capacity to talk about it and he has no idea what you're talking about, but introduce it starting in your late 30s, early 40s. I mean, the earlier, the better, start to introduce that curiosity and exploration is part of what sex is for you.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, depending on when you started to have kids, right? There's oftentimes as we become perimenopausal, our kids are going into college, right? So we're becoming empty nesters. And now with our primary partner, we may be going, well, who are you? I've been sleeping next to you for 25 years, but we don't know who we are. We've gone through so many changes. And so this is where a lot of relationships end in divorce, because they don't know how to find their way back to each other now that they're different. And so you could really shift how that's being held by choosing to be on an adventure together and learning how to fall in love all over again, and being curious and being courageous and looking at ways to go, so what if we had a whole new sex life? What if we turned towards each other instead of away from each other because we don't know how to relate? Learn how to relate again. A lot of people come together to have kids, and then that may be all they do. They don't necessarily stay together, but you do have a choice. And it's something to, instead of like dread, you could shift into excitement. There is a way to go. Can we communicate enough now that we can learn how to get closer instead of further away? And it's also possible that that's just the role you were meant to have with each other, and that there's someone else out there for you now to go have an adventure with. It's just an interesting, the timing of it is so interesting, right? How like the mothering years start to close. Yes. Kids don't need you the same way they did. And now it's time for you to really be with you. And like you were saying earlier, gather that wisdom and see, all right, the next chapter is on the horizon.
Yeah. And who are you now? Like after the kids leave the home, like you've devoted so much of yourself to the family and to them growing up. And so who are you now? There's a big pause period, right? There's a big and there needs to be a time for you to come back home to yourself. And usually it's not just like 1 week away, it's like multiple weekends and weeks and things, and it's an ongoing process. And I think it's Esther Perel says, we have multiple relationships in our adult years. It's just a question of if they're with the same person. I don't know
Right,
how the quote
right.
goes
It's like,
exactly.
she's like, most people will go through 3 marriages in their life, and if they're lucky, they'll have 3 marriages with
That's
the
it.
same person. So
That's it. Yeah.
it's you can re-engage, you can find out who you are together again if you want to, but it might take some effort, some
Yeah.
time, and some like staying present, not being able to numb out and go away,
Yeah.
maybe the way you've been doing it just to get through the stress of raising kids and having careers and trying to make money for your retirement. There's a lot of things we do to check out because life is hard, and we need some of that checking out because we can't be that focused and present all the friggin' time. Like I can notice, like, the more
Absolutely.
crazy my schedule is, the more time I need to read a smutty novel, because I need to just decompress and check out and go visit another world and not have to worry about mine. And
Yes.
so it's like you got to kind of keep striking that balance.
I was just gonna say, in that stage in life when you're like, shit, now I'm next to this partner of mine and our kids are gone and I don't know who I am and I don't know who they are and shoot, what do I do? How do I figure this out? I mean, that's the time to get some help. Like reach out to Leah or I or somebody, reach out and get some help, because if you're in it, it's hard to see objectively. Like you just can't. The eye can't see its own eye. You need someone outside of you to help you navigate where you're at and where you'd like to be and how to get there. And you don't even maybe know where you'd like to be. Like that's not even clear yet. So you need help getting clarity on that so that you can actually rise up to this new essence inside of you. A new essence is being born inside of you. It's kind of like a rebirth. I feel like menopause is it's an opportunity to rebirth not only your sexuality but also your femininity, and to own your femininity in a new way. So it's
I like
really bringing
that.
that mother into the crone years.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we could go through your list, because you had a great list. We were talking before pressing record for this podcast today about things that women may want to like rediscover inside themselves, or if they've never discovered it, here's a new point of going, okay, in this pause, I'm going to pause and take some time to learn A, B, and C. So what are some of the things that you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about them already, but basically, like just starting to think about intimacy as something other than penetrative sex. Intimacy can be pillow talk, it can be cuddling,
Eye
it can be
gazing.
dreaming up vacations together, eye
Dream a
gazing, tantric kissing,
Yeah, more
tantric breath
vulva
work.
play, like really pay
That's
attention
right.
to the outside of the vulva. Let the inside be like, it's not about getting it up, getting it in, and getting it off. I think we have this I think Sherry Winston calls it a premature penetration issue in our culture, where it's like, can we just realize that there's a lot of amazing, juicy, sexy, arousing areas on the vulva that need to be explored and awakened before we head towards penetration. If you want penetration to be more comfortable, it's key that you revisit the vulva and all of its deliciousness and spend some more time there.
Yeah, more cunnilingus, baby.
Yeah.
And and more oral in general, I think, is going to be really useful at this stage in life. And play with, ladies, like play with a little bit of deep throating, like letting the back of your throat, that back soft palate, open up. That there's actually a very strong correlation between your yoni and your throat. So opening up the throat can really help to open up the yoni, and even singing, like, using your voice and singing and making sound is a really great way to also open up your yoni. That's what they do in childbirth. It's like, take that sound so you can move that baby through. And there's when you fold the body in half at the belly button, you can see that the throat is a mirror image to the yoni, and the jaw, this
That's
whole
right.
jaw girdle, it's the same as the pelvic girdle. So it's very interesting the way the body works. And so just play with your body. Have fun.
Yeah, and a lot of men are often their testosterone levels are going down around the same time, age period. They're going to be encountering more soft-ons versus hard-ons, and so the same like compassion and understanding for these changes in our bodies needs to also be explored if you have a male partner. It's like, how can you pleasure a soft-on? Just like you would want your vulva pleasured, right? There's no tissue on the body quite like a soft penis and the elastic tissue stretchiness, yumminess of labia and lips and that tissue of the vulva. And so there's a way to like suck on that and to love on that and to normalize that. And when you can realize that there's so much subtle pleasure that gets missed because we don't put attention on it, to playing with the yin, to being in the slowness, to having like the supple, the lightest touch, to be able to explore the body without the raging hormones. There's pleasure to be had that people bypass. And so here's a time to like savor that and discover what is magical about our sexuality when it's not so driven by hormones. Instead, it can be driven by like real love and real consciousness, including things like soft porn, and fantasies and, playing with role playing and dirty talk and like discovering this other erotic side that maybe has been untapped.
Yeah, it can be really uncomfortable. And I just want to say, if you're getting uncomfortable in your sexuality, then you're on the right track.
Yes, that's a good sign.
Because if you've never done role playing before, you've never gotten that dirty with your dirty talk before, but it's like, because there's something taboo about it. Like it really is like naughty, and that is exciting. And so stretch yourself and see what happens to your body as you stretch your mind, because the biggest, most important sexual organ in the body is right here between your ears. So you got to get stimulated up in here in order to move the energy down to the lower chakras.
Is there anything else you want to say about sex after menopause, Willow?
Just don't stop having it. Just keep going, keep exploring, just whatever sexuality is to you. If it's, kissing, or if it's cuddling, or if it's just dreaming up a vacation, just keep the intimacy alive.
Yeah.
And if you're single, if you're on your own, then spend some time doing like an inner beloved sex magic practice, where you once a week, you light the candles, put on the music, make the incense smell good in the room, and you start to move your body. You don't even have to go into sexuality, but you just start to move your body, bust out the coconut oil, rub it all over your body, and really love your body like as it is right now, and really drop into acceptance for where you're at in your body and in your life in this moment. Because if you don't have that in place, it's hard to get it on the outside.
Yeah, I would touch yourself and your body the way you long the beloved to touch you. Like, just skip the middleman. Skip the part that says,
right.
I can't have this without this. And you start giving yourself what you long for. What you'll discover is like so much abundance as a result of that. Don't wait to be loved. Love yourself now, and you'll see a lot of positive changes happen in your life.
Yeah. And honestly, those sessions, those are some of my best orgasms anyway. So, I mean, you can have so much fun in those sessions, and they can go on for hours, or they could be 20 minutes. Like, really, it's up to you. It's whatever your inner beloved calls for. And if you haven't been spending that much time tuning in with your own essence, then it's probably going to want more time from you in the beginning. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again on the Sex Reimagined podcast. Love, love, love.
Thanks for tuning in. If the hosts seem to know what they were talking about, that's because they do. Leah Piper is a tantric sex master coach and a positive psychology facilitator. Dr. Willow Brown is both a Chinese and functional medicine doctor and a Taoist sexology teacher. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.